Good evening, and welcome to this panel discussion to share the stories of our neighbors who have experienced homelessness in our community. My name is Doreen Binder. As Fran said, I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Portland, and I'll be moderating this evening's panel. This program is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Portland. In the League, we work to protect democracy and help preserve and promote the rights to participate in government through voting and through understanding and speaking out on the issues that affect our communities. This program will be taped by Metro East Community Media for rebroadcast and will be available for online viewing at the League of Women Voters of Portland website soon following this evening. Our program is supported by a grant from the Multnomah Bar Foundation. Tonight's speakers have generously agreed to share their stories of resilience, how they came to experience houselessness, and how they have preserved and thrived in the face of challenges. Each speaker will introduce herself or himself and briefly share her or his experience in overcoming housing challenges. If the speakers have questions or comments for each other, we will ask them to share those with the other speakers after they finish the initial remarks. I may also have some additional questions to ask, and I will ask that the questions that you are going to be writing, there's going to be somebody walking around with cards. Please fill them out and ask whatever questions you want, and we'll be asking them from up here. The League members will be collecting those cards and bringing them to me. Our first speaker tonight, I'm sorry to say, is not quite here yet. She's on the bus, so we're going to move to Damien. Damien Blakely is our first speaker tonight. Damien is an artist, a photographer, and an advocate for the homeless and disabled. Damien, can you share with us how you became committed to your art and your advocacy for the homeless and disabled, and what your plans for the future
are? I became homeless in 2006, brutally homeless, and I was homeless up until 2010 when I did find housing. However, as with quite a few homeless people who get their housing, there was not enough support structure, so I did lose my housing after 1 year. So between 2011 and 2017, I was brutally homeless again. I became non-homeless with tons of hard work and help. Rather than tell my story, I have a few comments on what it's like to be homeless. And one thing that quite a few people don't necessarily realize is that being homeless is a process of accelerated aging and dying. The mind and body are stressed beyond any reasonable levels of normalcy. So all 4 seasons are hazardous to one's safety and health when one is homeless. When the mind is stressed, the body suffers greatly. When the body is stressed, the mind suffers. And when both the mind and body are stressed, one's mental and physical health deteriorates rapidly. So being homeless actually is a process of accelerated aging and dying. Being homeless means being stressed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days per year. And being homeless is dangerous, it's very scary, it's degrading. There is an almost total lack of safety, and being homeless itself becomes a full-time job. Standing in multiple lines over and over becomes a part of daily life. Multiple and repeated traumas become daily routines. One interesting fact is that the rates of alcohol and/or drug use addiction is roughly the same among the housed as it is among the homeless. So there's a good clarification. 44% of homeless people have serious mental health issues, and domestic violence percentages among the homeless runs 58.9% for women, 38.2% for men. And as we all know, HUD funding and Section 8 type funding began to be cut and decreased in the 70s, and it's continuing to accelerate. There are more than 12 Portland City ordinances which criminalize homelessness, including the misuse of a water fountain. The libraries have long served as a refuge for the homeless, and the county library has 27 rules of conduct, many of which are directed directly at the homeless library patrons, with most offenses having a punishment up to a 3-year ban from all libraries. So it's pretty tough being homeless and trying to go to the library. A number of years back, the city was sued. The Anderson versus Portland settlement requires the city to give homeless people 24 hours to move from their current home site. Oftentimes, the city and its contractors do not follow this rule. There are hierarchies within the housed population, but also among the homeless population. There are hierarchies among the homeless population, and classism and oppressionism. Oppression is practiced among the homeless populations in addition to the classism that homeless people experience anyways. I lived in the woods. I lived by myself. I did not stay in shelters. I lived in the woods, not on the downtown streets. Homeless on homeless crime is endemic and is systemic. It's very difficult to receive services or assistance from the police. When I was living in the woods, a 250-pound, 6'2" criminal felon with a criminal record in 7 states attempted to kill me. I managed to get away. I called the police. The police came in force. When they realized I was homeless, they shrugged their heads, scratched their heads, and said, "Homeless on homeless crime. I mean, why did you call us?" So it's very difficult to get proper help from the police. Homeless men and women who attempt to report being raped are not helped or assisted. One really needs to be housed in order to receive police services. There's a lot of transgender homeless people who have a hard enough time in life, and when they are homeless, their lives are extraordinarily difficult. And I found my experiences being homeless to be rather difficult. One interesting statistic about the homeless is when homeless people die in hospitals, they are not counted as having died homeless. And I'm hoping that that'll change at some point. So, more or less in conclusion, being homeless sucks. I mean, when it all boils down to it, one can simply say that. And society seems to treat homeless people as secondary citizens, and I hope someday that that will change. And that's
Damien, thank you.
pretty much about my 10
No, Damien, you're not done yet. We're going to keep going, but thank you, Damien. Our next speaker, thank you for, I'm sorry you got, we started without you. I'm sorry, I apologize. Our second speaker is Lisa Larson, a resident of Dignity Village, and until recently, the CEO of the village. Mm-hmm. Lisa, can you tell us your challenges that you've had to overcome and how you became involved with Dignity Village and what pathways you see for yourself in the future?
And just out of curiosity, how much time do I have? It's 10 minutes. Well, first of all, for me to become homeless, it was a road of a lot of domestic violence. And it was also a very strong learning point in my life. But the domestic violence, I had to escape. I was going to end up dead if I didn't. And so I ended up escaping, and the only way I could stay away from him was to put myself homeless. Now, in the meantime, I had met another gentleman who, well, he's my other half. He's my super glue to his duct tape, or however he says it. But we're stuck together. He is my soulmate, and he kind of proved that along the way several times. But once I became homeless, I started staying in an abandoned house, or actually it was a house up for sale, because it did have heat, thank goodness. And we're in the dead of winter because it was Christmas Eve time, and that's when I finally made the final break, was Christmas Eve. So we stayed in the abandoned house, a couple of them throughout the area. I got arrested 2 times, and I had no record to begin with. But we got arrested 2 times out of the abandoned houses for, well, the first time I got arrested, we were hollered at. We came downstairs from the room we were staying in. And when we walked out of this completely stripped out house, the wiring had been taken out, the bathtub, the toilet, everything was gone in this house. They had been called in for a burglary. Well, there was nothing for us to steal. But as we came walking out of the house, I happened to look down, and I had a red dot on my chest. And I looked out in the little field that was around, and there were about 5 shooters out in the field ready to take aim and fire it at us at any time. That was an experience. We got arrested again shortly thereafter, staying in another abandoned house. But it's been a learning experience. I had never done any jail time. I ended up doing 16 days total for being homeless, for sleeping with a roof over my head. And we didn't stay downtown. We stayed out in the Milwaukee area. And we did that for about a year, and I don't know how many times the cops would chase us out of the house. And I always was the type that, the cops were the good guys. And a lot of them were, but a lot of them weren't. So through all of this, a lot of, and as you were saying, a lot of mental illness comes about. Well, we started camping in the area in Milwaukee, and the guy I was with, who is now my husband, started acting a little weird and started acting, well, I'll put it bluntly, I thought I was going deaf because he was hearing voices that I couldn't hear. And a lot of times, schizophrenia comes up from trauma, lack of sleep, lack of good nutrition, and all the other things that kind of encompass with being homeless. And so here he is, he's losing his mind. He thought I had done something to him to cause this. He thought other friends had done something to cause this. And all it was the lack of sleep, sleeping with one eye open and one ear open, trying to protect me. First, he was protecting me from the ex-boyfriend who was still trying to kill me. And then after that, he was protecting me from everybody else because we had all of our stuff stolen. If it wasn't stolen, it was ruined. We came back to our camp one time and had tomato soup, tomato sauce, shampoo, conditioner, anything liquid was dumped all over our bedding, all over our clothes, and in the boots, everywhere. And when you're homeless, even though we were working almost full time at that point, both of us, you don't ever have the money to get ahead, to pay for your rent, especially the first and last and pet deposit or whatever it is. You just can't ever seem to come up with enough money to get ahead. So after our last bout in jail, Scott had heard about Dignity Village. So we went out to Dignity Village and got on the waiting list. And we were number 4, I think, on the list. And we had some friends we were able to stay with for a little while. And so our number finally came up. And we were allowed to go out and sleep in the Commons, which is a big living room for the village. And we felt completely ostracized. Nobody wanted us there, it didn't feel like. Of course, after you're on the streets for so long, nobody wants you anywhere. You become nothing and no one cares. And in fact, I remember telling my kids, oh, if you don't look at the homeless, they're not there. Boy, was I wrong. The homeless are not invisible. They are people. So anyway, we ended up out at Dignity Village, and we had said 6 months, get in, get on our feet, and get out. Don't get involved. Well, that was 8 years ago. Within 6 months, I became security coordinator, which is one of their lead positions. And I'd gone from nothing now to maybe somebody. And throughout the years, I became the treasurer and the vice chair and chairperson for 2.5 years. I'm now back to security coordinator, and my husband has taken over the chair position. But the village is a huge thing in my life. It has gotten both of us involved in community, and I am now a firm believer in living in community. If we move out of the village, I'm almost hoping to find some communal type place to go and stay. Because, well, my husband was raised, the first thing you do is move into a neighborhood is piss off your neighbors. That way you don't have to deal with barbecues and birthday parties and loaning tools and all of that. Let me tell you, he believes in community now. We've had a couple of things happen at the village. Well, one, we had a fire inside of our place. A propane lantern exploded, and we weren't in there. And we lost about 90% of our belongings. But before the fire department left, we had a place to sleep. We had clothes. We had food. We had blankets. And 90% of the village was out looking for our cat, who was locked up in the house when the fire started. So it is a true sense of community. We kind of deem ourselves as a completely dysfunctional family, but it's a 60-member dysfunctional family. I think anybody's going to be dysfunctional. So being homeless has been a definite learning experience, from going from the little good girl to going to jail. And let me tell you, Clackamas County, it was like a family reunion for me in Clackamas County. But so it went from being the good kid, going to jail, and rebuilding myself. And personally, I am a better person than I probably ever have been, because I do care about people. Before, when I was in the house, I didn't care. I cared about me, my family, and, you know, what sort of toys we were going to be able to buy. You don't need any of that. You need family and friends and community. And I think I'll be finished.
Thank you, Lisa, very much. Thank you. Our next I'm sorry. Lisa, I did say Lisa. Melissa Castor is our next speaker. Melissa is a resident of Hazelnut Grove and an elected member of the board of the Overlook Neighborhood Association. Melissa, can you share your challenges you've had to overcome and how you became involved with Hazelnut and what your plans for the future are?
Challenges I've overcome. Well, becoming a member of Hazelnut Grove was asked upon us by a founder, which was Jose Sirica. He was a pastor, and I met him through Sisters of the Road Cafe when I was on the board of directors there. We were residing under a bridge and we built a community under Morrison Bridge on Nadeau Parkway. And it was the worst bridge. It was the middle ground for the other bridges where people would meet to score drugs and try to hurt people. We resided under that bridge and made it a clean and sober bridge where people could approach us. We were more approachable. We helped the people get along, learn respect for themselves and for others, gathered resources for the other bridges that didn't have access. During that time, a lot of people were harmed, so we didn't want to leave them until the sweeps started happening. The sweeps were happening at all the other camps, and the police and the Clean and Safe and even the city came out to speak with us, and were asking us, getting our advice on the T1 building that was supposed to go up and the Wapato jail and some other tent village, we let them know that if they put too many people in one space, that it would be chaotic without enough staffing. They did not wish to sweep us, but we had to ultimately leave. The signs were posted, so everyone was relocated. My husband and I moved to Hazelnut Grove. Challenges there that I walked into where there was no communication at the time with the Overlook Neighborhood Association, because there was a lawsuit filed by the Overlook Neighborhood Association to the city. So they stopped communicating. I started going with some members to the meetings, and during one of the meetings, there was a change that was, they were trying to change the bylaws to where it excluded the voices of the houseless community to be able to use their voices in the meetings. That was quickly swept. They were told that they could not do that. After this happened, there was they were doing nominations for the new board members, doing their annual. So several of us agreed to go and put our names on the ballot and got to speak a few minutes to tell the neighborhood about ourselves, and they elected me. We had previously just gone through a long mediation process, which I was a part of as well because I was the liaison. And everything we were asked to do, we did, and then some. We bent over backwards for this Overlook Neighborhood Association to try to get along with them. Some of the things that they asked of us was to contact the city to get joint services with Mark, Jolyn, and other services that we actually needed. But the chair went above our head and went to the media and said that things that were not true. So I was elected on the board, and when things would come up now, still, as they do, I actually have to speak up and say when it's not true, because if you stay silent, people will construe that as fact. If you just stay silent. And if someone's pushing their personal agenda, they cannot do so any longer, stating that it's the whole entire board's decision. They have to come to us, the whole board, and make an agreement with all of us that they can actually follow through on any of their plans now, in the future. There was recently on the board an agenda item which was, he was trying to revise the bylaws again. So a couple of us volunteered for that committee, and I'm on that committee as well. We developed a houseless outreach committee as well, and we'll be having our third meeting on the 22nd. And it's awesome, really. We get to talk about ideas and gather resources and see how we can reach people that don't want to be involved and include them in conversations and community and just show them that we care. Because if you show a little bit of empathy and compassion to these people, they will blossom. Because they've lost hope. And that's one of the challenges, is trying to push that effort of love forward in developing community, whether you're under a bridge, in a camp, or in a regular neighborhood with houses. Everybody included. They're trying to bridge that gap on the separation that we see in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. What an interesting life. Our next speaker is somebody that I know well, DeWanna Harris. DeWanna is one of the managers at Transition Projects, who I've known for, again, have the honor to know. DeWanna, can you share some of your story about your challenges and what helped bring you to Transition Projects and how you plan for your future?
I feel like I have some tough acts to follow here. Homelessness was definitely not a choice. It was something I never saw in my future, something my family never saw for my future. I was always a straight A student, academic scholarship right out of high school, homeowner by the age of 27. Like, life was really good. I started going to Ray when I got married and just started making poor choices, getting involved with crime, and started drinking pretty heavily. The relationship turned abusive. I had a warrant out for my arrest, and so me and my partner became homeless together. And we were pretty much up and down the West Coast, California, Nevada, Washington, just on a crime spree, just trying to get money and make ends meet. Sometimes we'd have enough money for a hotel, sometimes we'd be sleeping in the bushes, sometimes we'd be sleeping in a park on a playground structure, just wherever we could get shelter. I really isolated from my family at that time. I was embarrassed about what was happening to me and the abuse that I suffered because everyone always saw me as this strong person and a strong woman who wouldn't let the things that were happening to me ever happen to me. And so things got to a place where he went away to prison, and I eventually found myself in prison. Right, and I'm very angry and upset and mad at the world because the judge had no business putting me in prison because my name was DeWanna, and he just didn't know who I was. And this was really my mentality at this time. I really thought I was a walking princess and had no care and concern about my fellow man. And so in prison, the first few months, reality still hadn't set in. Like I said, I just stayed angry all the time. I hadn't had any contact or visits with my children. My father suffered, he had a triple bypass heart surgery. The next month, my favorite uncle passed away. The following month, I found out my 4-year-old daughter at the time was clinically and manically depressed because she was missing me so much. And then the month after that, the December of 2008, I will never forget that snowstorm. The prison lost power. We didn't have food. I remember being fed Crustables, and they were frozen, and we were putting them under our mattresses to try to warm them up enough just to be able to eat. In January, I finally got my first visit, which was really, really exciting. And I also got a letter from Clark County in Washington saying, hey, you need to come see us. We need to talk to you about some things. And so that had me stressed out. And so it wasn't until about February where I was like, okay, everything I've been doing is starting to catch up to me, is when I realized you got to figure something out and do something different with your life. Like, this is not working. It's time for you to take some accountability for your situation. And so by the time I did complete my prison sentence that July, I found myself at transition projects. Just to the point where it was like, you know what, I'm going to swallow my pride. That's something I've never done before, and I'm just going to go for broke and just tell them the truth. Like, I'm not going to lie for a change in my life and see where that gets me, because I had basically tried everything else. And the people there made me feel like I was a person again. I didn't feel judged. I felt supported, and I felt like they got me, as a human being. And so through their assistance and through their help, I was able to finally get back into stable housing, get custody of my children back. I went back to school and became a certified alcohol and drug counselor. Then went to Portland State and got my bachelor's in social work. While I was working on my bachelor's, I did my internship at Transition Projects and got my first social services job there after doing my internship. But at first, when they ran my background check, it was like, nope, absolutely not, right? But then Doreen decided to take a chance on me. It's like, you know what, let's try this and see what happens. And so I've been able to pretty much thrive ever since. While I was at Transition Projects, I participated in a pilot project that they had, which was their mentor program, which was basically folks who had, addressed their homelessness and been successful coming back to help those along the way so they can do the same thing. And so that's where I find myself today, managing that very same program that really was foundational and a pillar in me having it together today, which I look back and I'm just in awe and amazed. And and I think about what Damien was saying, that there really isn't enough support out there for folks, and that's what they need. If people had other places to go or other support systems, that's where they would be, right? People aren't just choosing to stay homeless. Most people aren't. At least when you're seeing, it feels like no one cares. It reminds me of how when I was out there, I felt like I was just a shell of a person trying to function in a world where it felt like nobody cared about me at all, right? Like I didn't matter. Even if I would say hello to someone walking on the street, they would just ignore me. And it does start to have that effect on your mental, and like, okay, maybe this is my fate. Maybe I'm not worth anything. Maybe I'm not gonna ever amount to anything or be able to accomplish any goals. And so breaking the silence and sharing my story about a lot of the horrific things that happened to me as far as domestic violence and Melissa, just that loss of hope, hopelessness, that sense, that deep thread and sense of hopelessness that you feel when you're out there, reminded me of how just compassion and empathy goes so far, when you're interacting with people who are living on the streets. They don't necessarily need anything from you. Sometimes they just want you to hear them, but even just saying, hello, how are you doing? I hope you have a good day. Can have such a huge impact on that person's day. You have no idea. You might be giving somebody the will to go on just for one more day. I've worked with a lot of people. I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot of horrific stories, especially when folks have been sexually assaulted and the police come in and seeing that the person is homeless or, somebody who is struggling in their addictions and just walking away and not doing anything about it. And these are the folks who we're supposed to turn to for help, right? And it makes sense if you're homeless. And this is what you're seeing every day, and you're going through all this trauma, why wouldn't I want to have a drink? Why wouldn't I want to get loaded just to escape my reality for a little while? But if we can get those supports in place, like Transition Projects does more than just supply shelter. Most of our budget goes into housing people, but there are a lot of support services involved as well. So whether that's alcohol and drug treatment, mental health support, finding employment, support groups, a lot of community partners coming in, providing haircuts, just a slew of things. I believe that we can really continue to make a difference out here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Remarkable women and a man. Remarkable people. Thank you so much. I want to give you the opportunity now, if you would like to address some questions to each other. And Lisa, is there any questions that you have for the other panel members?
Not that I can think of, but kudos to you. Kudos.
Thank you.
You overstepped our stories, or at least I feel like that. So you're remarkable.
Thank you.
Damien, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Melissa?
Questions. I have a lot of questions.
She always does.
Are they the right ones, though? I think we need to just ask ourselves, what can we do when there's nothing and people have lost hope? How can we go out into the world and try to make a difference in people's lives? Like what she said, what we've all been saying here, we've all come from different walks of life. I think people that have it all don't realize when others out there that don't have anything, they learn to value time more, value the small little sweet nothings way more than when they had it all. And I appreciate all of you for being here today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I have a question. I think a lot of you really spoke to it already, but is there something that you really want the general public to understand about the challenges of homelessness specifically?
Wow. We at Sisters of the Road, we did a documentary called On the Ground. We premiered in 2017 at the Portland Historical Society. It takes people through the walk and day in the life of a homeless person. Challenges they face, it's very difficult meeting their basic needs. And people will go around and scream at them and call them lazy and bums and put labels on them. And I think that's the worst thing anybody can do, because they're dehumanizing these people. They're still human. and they do have needs, and it's their right to have adequate housing, shelter, a bathroom, a shower, clean clothes, things that a lot of people take for granted. Whereas you can use the bathroom really quickly in your homes, it takes a person that's houseless hours to get to that bathroom if they are allowed to get into the bathroom. Businesses won't allow homeless people in with their belongings. They have to be able to purchase something which they may not have money for. It's very difficult, and they travel very far to find a bathroom when the loos are locked. And it's just very heartbreaking because these are people, like we said, are lacking in so much, especially sleep. And if they're running around with all their belongings to get just to a bathroom, and then running around to stand in those hour lines to get a meal or the shower, that will take a couple more hours till you get that. These people are very resilient. If anybody wants to add labels to these people besides lazy and bums, they should add better labels, like warriors, survivors, minimalist. Add better labels if you want to add any labels at all.
Thank you.
I would add to that, a lot of people, like you were saying, a lot of people think the homeless are lazy. Absolutely not. You will meet some absolutely phenomenal human beings with some amazing stories, people who speak 5 languages, who've traveled the world, and life has just happened to them. Life has just shown up. And, they're having to make real choices every day. I know a lot of times we're saying, hey, just provide more services and they can just get there. Well, when you're homeless, if my appointment with my case manager or whoever is at 12:30 and the meal center is serving food at 12:30, I have to decide what's most important for me that day. Do I eat today or do I go meet with my case manager? Right, which can be problematic. And so we have to think about those aspects of the services that we're providing too. Are they really accessible for the folks that we're trying to serve?
Like the Right to Rest Act is very sad because in libraries you might fall asleep and you get kicked out, you can get a ticket. It's really sad when you are outdoors and you're ill. I have MS. I take medication. My husband, I take medication because my MS attacks cause me to have seizures from the pain. My husband would have to sit with me when I would take my medication to control it because it's like a storm. You can't just make it go away with medication. You don't know when it's going to hit you and you don't know when it's going to go away. He would have to sit by me when I would lay on a park bench just to sleep to try to make it go away because the light, the sound, everything just hurts you. Everything's painful, and you're out there and you're waiting for Social Security to go through or the applications for low-income housing or something to go through to help. But if there's nothing, you have to try to make those changes somehow to positively impact your lives and possibly others.
There's some questions here from the audience that I'd like to pose to you. If you were on a commission that had to decide how to spend $10 million to address homelessness, how would you spend it? Damien?
Build housing. All $10 million of it.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
So DeWanna, affordable housing, and what does it mean? I don't know that people really understand the term. Can you explain that to us?
So it basically means where a family wouldn't be spending more than 30% of their income towards their rent. Right, towards their rent. A lot of families, even folks who are housed today, are rent burdened, which means they're spending more than 30% of their income. A lot of folks are spending like 50% of their income towards rent, so they're really on the cusp and fringes of becoming homeless. So we do some eviction prevention services. We see on a lot of that coming through our doors. So it's not just the people who are experiencing homelessness. It's also the folks who are living in poverty. And I mean, you have folks who are working 2 and 3 jobs trying to make ends meet and are still struggling to meet rent.
Thank you.
I do have a comment, though.
Sure.
$10 million is going to get maybe 1 building.
Maybe.
Maybe. and that might house 200 tops. I would say take that 10 million and build villages. Villages it costs about $2,000 per unit. Now we have no electricity and no running water to each unit, but we are trying to put solar in all of our places. But we do have communal shower, communal sink, so we have what we need. But I can't remember what the numbers were, but it's a huge amount of money per square foot in an apartment complex, where $10 million would go a long way to put in a village or several villages. And that would house a whole lot of people.
Thank you.
May I comment as well? If communities would adopt a camp, say how many people you'd like to see in that camp, even probably possibly beautify that space and care for that space. Also, we would need a little bit of green area to build a garden so that you can have food that will sustain that village as well, and possibly the neighborhood. That could even possibly build jobs, like with people like Food by Design that we're working with right now to do that. It'll help people gain employment and help feed the community. So if people would adopt in their communities a camp where the neighborhood is on board, where they won't have the backlash of the neighborhood, and they would have that support system in place. Say 6 to 10 people, a small camp, 5 houses, if it's couples, depending. It wouldn't harm your community too severely, and it wouldn't cost very much at all. It takes a community to make these things happen when there's no solutions out there. And this would not cost that 10 million. There'd be excess left to help, gather resources for these little villages. Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's just political correctness. Can somebody explain the difference between houselessness and homelessness, please?
I actually spoke on this. People changed the term because houseless, it's a loaded word. It's a loaded name. It comes with the perceptions and misconceptions of the whole entity. So if you view homeless people as drug users or alcoholics or this and that, it all comes together when they say you're homeless. So all of that is pointed at you. And they're different people out there. We changed the term to try to change the loaded word so that people wouldn't see it. We're not homeless, we're houseless. Because if you have love around you in a community and family and friends and people that'll stand for you, stand beside you when something goes wrong, you have a home.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is addressed to Damien, but I would like to ask all of you, do you each have a support system? And how did that come about?
Interesting question. I did not have a support system. My support system evolved from my work with Sisters of the Road Cafe. So my support system is pretty much based around Sisters of the Road. Yeah.
So you've built your own community, or you become involved?
Yes, yeah.
Lisa, do you have?
Well, my support system started off with my husband. The dog and the cat don't hurt that at all, and in fact, they're wonderful support. But living in the community that I live in, we know each other really well. And yeah, you don't always get along with everybody, and yeah, you may not really like that person. But out of almost 60 people every day, there is a huge support system. And if something goes wrong, they're there to help you out. If something is really good, they're there to celebrate with you. And we've had people at the village who have almost sabotaged themselves for moving out. They've got housing. They may have been paying rent for 3 months, but they're still living in the village because they're afraid of giving up that support.
Anything else?
Support systems. I have Village Coalition that helps a lot. Food by Design, Sisters of the Road Cafe, TPI a lot. Lisa had offered to come out to our GA recently, so we've been developing friendships within our communities because we're going to these meetings and getting to know each other. There's so many supports. We have churches. I have God. He's my best friend. I have my husband. We had church under a bridge, okay? We had Sunday service under a bridge that people were welcome to come to. We had children come and sing to us. We have Tivnu, Caitlin Grable that came out and built. Caitlin Grable invented the juice boxes and these solar panels, and they put them on our houses, on our little tiny homes. My church, we raised the money in our church to build our home, and our pastors came out and helped my husband build it. We also have Andy Olshan. He's building these, they're washing shower mobiles. And it's awesome, and it's beautiful because people will have access to laundry and a shower where otherwise they might not. There's so many people, wonderful people. Agape Church with Ron Clark. He's come out and helped build with his members. I mean, there's so many people, and we would not have been able to do it without these people. Rebuild It Center, yeah.
It's people
so
helping
the city
people.
of Portland
Yes.
has had this on their agenda for years and years and years. The issue of homelessness, houselessness, and well, there's always homelessness. What are the? Is the city moving in the right direction? What are two things that they're doing that show you that they're moving in the right direction, or two things that tell you that they are not moving in the right direction? I'll give you the option.
I don't currently see the city moving in any positive directions currently. I think that the county is doing a much better job overall of assisting and helping the homeless, but I can think very hard, and I cannot think of anything that the city is currently doing that is very uplifting or helpful to the homeless community. I see that being done by the county, though.
Lisa, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm just trying to think of exactly who was involved, but here, my firm belief is villages, villages, villages. Sorry, I really like my village. And Village of Hope was trying to get started in an area that they have been camped in, or other people have been camping in forever, and just destroying the area. Village of Hope went in, cleaned it up, was trying to do their best to get a village going, and what happens? They get swept. And I believe that was city. So my opinion is not very high on the city right now.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, I didn't even see you.
I'm going to take a different note. The city has offered some services. We would not be able to use the bathroom if we didn't have porta potties. In the summertime, we have access to water at the park, whereas when we don't, we go to Rebuild It Center that offers us water. We have to haul our water. They offer us a garbage service as well. They have attended meetings and were part of that mediation process that I spoke about on the Good Neighborhood Agreement with the Overlook Neighborhood Association. They're actually currently looking for land. I believe there's 5 sites that are prominent that might work for new camps, which they came out, Mark Jolin with the Joint Office and Caitlin Burke came out and asked us questions on what they could do, what kind of questions should they ask, what would it look like? And I said, well, first of all, involve the neighborhood that you plan to have these camps at. because then they will make sure that they won't be treated badly, the people, and they won't feel disrespected, and they'll be welcomed when the camps do happen to move in those areas, because a lot of them have to relocate. They're only allotted so much time on the lands that they already are on. So their hands are crossed, I can see that, but what can we do? And how can we come to them to show that we have found this, and how can you help us ahead of time so they won't, it'll prevent those sweeps from happening. If you get them on board and say, we have to do this now before, like in 2018, I don't know if they're even going to continue the emergency, the state of emergency on homelessness. So I'm not sure if that's still going to be in effect, and where are all the camps and where are all the people going to go. So if we can get them on board and create a solution that sustains people, maybe we have hope.
So I have two things. So one, going back to the previous question, as far as a support system. The first support I got was going to transition projects. So the agency that I went to, I don't think if I didn't get the support there, that I would have had the audacity to think that I could succeed in the goals that I was setting for myself. But I was a black sheep of my family, so my family was there and very supportive of me, and they are still there, and my faith community has been there for me. And something that I think is going right now is the Band-Aid fix, right? Like, we keep opening up these shelters, and that's just a Band-Aid. I mean, so the plus side to that is we won't, like Damien brought up earlier, it's like when people aren't inside, their health deteriorates so quickly. So that's a plus side to that, but the long-term effect to that is folks still aren't being housed, right? And when they lose hope, it's like, okay, if I could stay at this shelter and at least I'm inside now, why should I work hard to address my barriers if I'm going to continuously be told no? I'm going to continuously be punished for just trying to survive while I was out there. So it's kind of like a catch-22.
So I listened to, I was around when Vera Katz approved Dignity Village. It was very controversial at the time. It proved to be very successful. Shelters have been questioned whether or not people want to live there or they don't want to live there. Housing is scarce. Is there a one road, or do we have to look at all of these options?
You've got to look at all of them. The villages is one part of the solution.
Is it the ultimate solution? Is it
I don't think-
is an end to?
I don't think there's going to be an ultimate solution until we get everybody into housing that wants to be into housing, which would be lowering rents and just the whole realm of all the problems, because not a single person can live anywhere in the United States on a minimum paying job. But at least to me, the village, and yeah, I've been there for 8 years, it's not so much a stepping stone for me, but they're helping other people step up. It is a good way to rebuild who you are, rebuild community. So many people rush off to work, come back home, go into their house, they don't know who their neighbor is. If we were to all live in villages like we used to, would the homeless situation be the way it is? They used to help each other. If somebody was down on their luck or got injured, got hurt, the neighbors helped out. How often do you know when your neighbor's hurt or injured? Most people don't even know their neighbor's first name. So if we were to all help out one another, that's the ultimate solution in my mind. But the village is a great little stepping stone.
The villages do work, so it would be great to see the city and the county be more proactive in helping set up more villages. Of note, Hazelnut Grove and Dignity Village have been around for a long time, and they remain safe. There's not a lot of police calls showing up at these villages, so.
In fact, we're deemed as one of the safest neighborhoods in Portland per capita.
Exactly.
We police our own.
Are they a perfect solution? No, but they are a darn good alternative to sleeping in a wet stairwell.
DeWanna, I asked you this question one time. What's the difference between somebody who makes a change and somebody who can't or doesn't? What was it, the impetus that made each one of you move in the direction that you ultimately are? Two of you are political. You're in school, you're an artist. What was the change? There's usually an occurrence that causes us to go in, for lack of a better word, wrong direction. What was the occurrence that made you want to change?
I was done. I was just tired of my life, feeling like I was tired of feeling like a piece of tumbleweed just blowing wherever the wind blew me, and it just got to a point where it was like, you know what? No matter what it takes, I'm gonna knock on the door, every door, even if I don't get the answer that I'm gonna get, I'm gonna keep going. There were so many times that I wanted to go back to my old ways and to my old lifestyle, though, but if it wasn't for my support system, I have a very interesting story in regards to that, because, I did a lot of stealing when I was out and committing crimes. And so now I'm having to remember to budget, and I have my children back in my life now, and it was about to be wintertime, and I need to get my daughter a coat. Fred Meyer was having a sale on coats. I'm going to go in here and get her a coat. And the coat was $50. I'm like, they have lost their mind, right? And so I'm trembling and I'm shaking because those old feelings are coming back over me. I'm like, I can just put this coat on her and we can just walk out of the store, no big deal. And so what I did is I called my support system. I was like, look, I really need some help right here. I'm struggling. They trying to get $50 out of me. Do you know how hard I had to work to get this $50? And, and she laughed and explained to me like, that's actually a good deal. And I'm like, I left without the coat. I'm like, I'm not giving them $50. I just couldn't do it. And then the next day, I had went to some event where I run a $50 Fred Meyer gift card. And so I was able to go get her that coat. And so just having those affirmations and those small steps and being able to recognize those small steps is how I was going to get to my big goal and get to the stars were really reaffirming and having people along the way like, okay, I know this didn't turn out, but that doesn't mean we give up. You can be disappointed, but you don't get to be, just worn out and tap out, And I had a lot of phrases and little key words I would say to myself. You got to refuse to lose, no tapping out. Just all these things I would say to myself to keep me motivated and keep me going, because otherwise, no.
I mean,
Sure. Can you just repeat the question so I get my answer?
We in this city see thousands of people on the street who are homeless. Some stay there for a long time, and some say, I'm done. And it's not easy. I mean, it's not like I'm done or I'm on or off. But what is the change that happened to you that wanted you to move in a different direction, if there was?
Yeah, there actually was. It was an interesting situation. I had been homeless for quite some time. I decided that I wasn't going to live anymore. I was hospitalized in quite a few hospitals for a number of attempts to kill myself. What changed for me was when I was in the woods, a homeless woman happened to stumble into my camp. We became friends. When she was well enough to leave the woods, she did. She led me to Sisters of the Road, I became involved with Sisters of the Road, and I still had no intentions on getting housing myself, but what I discovered at Sisters of the Road was there was work to be done. What made me get into housing was, interestingly, was when I was in the woods and the felon attempted to kill me. Came this close. I had some friends who insisted that I get into housing, and I reluctantly agreed. So the change for me was a personal choice to give life, no pun intended, one more shot, as there was work to be done. Every homeless person who leaves the streets will have a very personal story. One thing that I did learn, and I have learned, is it's a lot more difficult to find housing and to leave the world of homelessness than it appears.
And I asked the question with the understanding that it's not necessarily a choice on or off, and that's what I said. It's not like I decided I don't want to be homeless anymore, and so tomorrow you find a house. I mean, there's a whole process, and it's difficult. It's not, so there are so many people on the streets who are saying, I'm done with this, I want to find something. Where do they go? And I mean, Dignity Village again, Sisters of the Road, Transition Project, Central Sea Concern, Join. There's resources. Not everybody, they can't contain everyone. What do we do next? What do we do? Because I don't believe that everybody on the streets wants to be on the street. I think they've come to the conclusion, I don't want to be here. But where are the resources?
Most people who are homeless actually do not want to be homeless. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to figure out why so many, okay, I'll use the term houseless. So many houseless people just do not have the ability to leave the streets for whatever reasons, whether it's financial, severe criminal records, severe mental illnesses. The barriers can be very daunting and varied. What can society do to help? Just keep the help coming. Keep the help available.
So at Dignity Village, I know that it's a clean and sober environment. How do you handle issues? You spoke about your husband on mental health issues. How do we address that issue in our community here, the issue of mental health?
Well, first of all, Dignity Village has 5 rules, since it's a 2-part question. It is no violence to yourself or others, no theft. Both of those will get you kicked out. Number 3 is no drugs or alcohol there or within a block radius. Now, we're all over the age of 18, and I believe right now we're all over the age of 21. So the rule makes it so we can go out, we can have some drinks, or if they're still using, they can go out and do whatever they do. But when they come home, they have to go straight to their structure. They can't be out and about, moseying around, maybe triggering somebody else to go out and drink or use. And then we have no constant disruptive behavior, which, okay, if you're going drinking and drugging, you're going to be a constant disruptive behavior or a constant disruptive person. And then we all have to contribute to the operation and maintenance of the village. And we do that by 10 hours a week of sweat equity. That's how we pay our rent. And we all have to pay $35 a month, and that's how we cover our overhead costs. If something happens that breaks one of those rules or one of our many other rules, we bring it before council, and council determines what's going to happen to that person. Now, we're in the position of trying to house people, not to unhouse people. So we really try not to kick people out. But on those occasions, we hope that the cops are there behind us to help us evict that person or exclude that person. And we're in a situation right now where we're having difficulty with that. And I see somebody over in the corner here I want to talk to after the meeting. But hopefully, most of the time when somebody does get kicked out of the village, they leave on their own. They man up, say, I've done wrong, and they move on. And some of those people can actually come back to the village. The violence one, no way, no how. They don't come back. We don't allow it. We have to feel safe. And that's pretty much the same way with the theft also. The drinking and drugs, we do a lot of peer support, a lot of peer counseling, and we do also have a drug and alcohol counselor that comes out about twice a month now. And that's really been helping.
One thing that I did learn that is actually very, very helpful are the low barrier shelters where you cannot drink or use while you are in the shelter, but you can be under the influence. Those types of shelters, as bad as it may sound, shelters will let people in who are drunk or high. Well, those people need to be sheltered as well. And so I'm glad that there are low barrier shelters in Portland.
We lose we lose a number of people on the street every year. How do we, I know there's a memorial. Can you explain it to the audience what is done? I think we have a ceremony every year acknowledging.
I haven't been part of it.
I'm only aware of what we do at Sisters. When someone in the community passes away, we hold a memorial there. Okay. And we let everybody know in the community know that we're going to remember them and speak on their behalf, memories, and bring pictures, and celebrate their life together.
So I think what you're speaking to, and I can't think of the exact name of what it's called, is once a year, and I believe it's in the wintertime. All the folks who have died who were experiencing homelessness, there's a memorial collectively held for them. And each name is read, and there's just, a moment of silence and just time to reflect and honor their memory.
Thank you so much. We've reached a point where we're getting close to the end, but I want to give each of you the time, a couple minutes to each of you to address what you would like to say to all of us. So we can start with you, DeWanna.
So I know I've been up here speaking a lot about affordable housing, which is really important, but as you can hear, you can see the issues of homelessness is very nuanced and complex. So even if we do give people housing, people struggle sometimes once they are in that housing because they've been on the streets for so long, and it can be hard for them to reintegrate into even being indoors. So with that needs to become support services after they are housed. So whether that is alcohol and drug counseling, whether that is helping them reacclimate to the community or getting to know their community that they're a part of now, I think it's important for them to be healthy. We've had folks who have been on the streets for 16 years and they get housed and they'll call their case manager and be like, you know what, I'm turning my keys in because I just can't do it. This bed is too soft, right? And so, just being creative in that, and the case manager saying, hey, well, sleep a couple days outside and then, maybe come home and sleep on the floor for a couple of days. It's really an adjustment to go back into housing and go back into a society that was ostracizing you and never wanted anything to do with you in the first place. And now I'm expected to interact into what is considered normal for society. So I think that's a huge, huge piece, not just the affordable housing, but making sure those supportive services are available for them afterwards as well.
Yes. Well, we've been opening up temporary shelters, warming shelters, and it's going to be getting cold again this week. We offer space at different churches, different locations. And we are actually, I am a volunteer. I'm a lead volunteer with my husband. And we train any other volunteer that would come in and protect the people that are there. And we're utilizing houseless people because they are the experts that can go in there and be able to talk to these people, our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, people that we've known for years that just want to be warm or eat something or sleep, that they feel protected. Because a lot of the shelters these days aren't safe. So it takes a community, it takes effort with people that care to make sure that these people are safe. Because I've slept at warming shelters with my husband and where he's asleep and I could not sleep because it was not safe. Because people will walk through with their flashlights and rob you. They will walk over you and rob you. They will walk up to people that they don't live at the shelters. They'll walk up to the people that are out off the street and empty someone that's in a wheelchair's backpack in front of you. So you become a defender and a protector of these people. When you're disabled yourself, but doing nothing, it's hard to not, to just sit there and watch that. Doing something is so much better than doing nothing. And that's...
Thank you. Damien?
The main difference between a housed person and a homeless person is a home. And I think that homelessness and houselessness is not going to go away. It will never be completely solved. And I can only hope that the city will really realize this, that homelessness and houselessness is not going to go away completely. When one is homeless, one sees the best in people and one sees the worst in people, whether someone is housed or not. Homelessness and houselessness is epidemic, and I believe it's going to get worse before it gets better. But the more homeless people that we can get off the streets, that's a good start. I think that the thing that bothers me most are that there are so many misperceptions about what houseless people are, who they are. Houseless people, when it boils down to it, are just regular people who just happen to not have housing.
Thank you, Damien. Lisa?
I've got two thoughts. One, the houseless people are people too. Don't ignore us out on the street. It will tear somebody down. That houseless person that you just passed on the road or on the sidewalk might have been your neighbor last year. Because most people are living one paycheck away from homelessness or houselessness. You could have a car accident and find yourself without a house because you can't pay your mortgage. You could get laid off from work and end up without a house. That's how a lot of people ended up out on the streets. So just remember that we're people too. We're human. And let me tell you, I have met some of the best people I've ever known living at the village. They were once out on the streets. And some of the worst people I've ever known were my friends when I was in a house.
I want to thank you. It's been an honor for me all these years to have had the opportunity to meet so many people and watch the courage that I see in the four of you. I want to thank you so much for being here. I'm just really honored to know you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to all of us.
Yes.
So this, give me a minute. This concludes the recorded part of our panel discussion. And again, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences and enlightening us and teaching us. I want you to look at the website for the League of Women Voters of Portland to find the Metro East Community Media schedule for rebroadcasting and the Metro East YouTube recording of this program, and you'll be able to view it online within a few days. And I want to thank our donors, the Multnomah Bar Foundation, the Ethel Noble Memorial Bequest, the Metro East Community Media for their support of this program. And I want to thank the audience and the volunteers for joining us tonight. This has been a production of Metro East Community Media and a presentation of the League of Women Voters of Portland Education Fund. Thank you.